They didn't raise their voices. They made no accusations. They simply left me off the guest list. It began with a message to the group. I wasn't included at dinner. My mother's birthday. Saturday at Lancaster Chop House. The fancy place by the water. Just immediate family. I learned about it from my younger brother, Spencer. He messaged me casually, as if it was no big deal. Hey, just FYI, my mother's dinner this weekend is mainly for immediate family only. Hope you're all right with that. Immediate family. I just stared at those words longer than I'd like to admit. I started to write a response, but erased it. Tried again, and deleted what I wrote once more. Eventually, I sent a single question. Was it intentional that you left me out? He never replied. Instead, my sister, Marie Roper Hastings, responded. After 2 hours, my sister Marie, now 3 years younger than me, living in our childhood town in North Carolina, divorced, with 2 sons, and working part-time as an aide in the elementary school we both attended, reached out. Let's not turn this toward you, Taylor. That was the end of it. I didn't write back. It wasn't because I had nothing to say. I had so many words. I simply couldn't justify spending them on people who'd already concluded I was too much, too distant, too different. I am Taylor Reed, 34. I co-founded NextRoute Solutions, a logistics tech company located in Portland. Our team develops forecasting route algorithms to help municipalities and organizations save time, fuel, resources, and money. In the environment I built, I feel valued, acknowledged, and important. Yet in the place I originated from, I'm like a shadow with a family name they recall only when it suits them. So no, I didn't plead, but I reserved a ticket, because when silence is this heavy, it demands some sort of response. I left North Carolina at 21. I had no cash, only a battered laptop with a broken hinge, a pair of suitcases, and a non-refundable ticket to Portland. My father never said farewell. My mother made me a tuna sandwich on rye bread, without leaving a note. Back then, I convinced myself that was sufficient. I rented a tiny studio above a deli that unlocked its doors at 5:30 a.m. I slept on a borrowed futon, worked as a server, attended data modeling classes at night, and wrote code in bus stations and laundromats. For 3 years, I hustled as if the rent was already overdue, which, truthfully, it usually was. My sister Marie stayed behind. She married a man named Marcus Hastings, a quiet churchgoer with a strong jaw and a gentle grin. Their first child arrived when she was 25, and a second was born 3 years later. I mailed presents for each baby. My sister seldom responded, but my mother always expressed her thanks for the clothes, storybooks, and Westmart gift cards. Her appreciation felt courteous, but not truly warm. I made an effort to return home that Thanksgiving. They explained the kids had RSV, and it wasn't a convenient time. At 29, I helped launch NextRoute Solutions alongside a former professor and a truck driver I'd met through a previous roommate. We created our original system by utilizing free open-source datasets and borrowed server space. The platform failed regularly, but on the occasions when it worked, nothing else could compare. In just 1 quarter, we helped a retailer reduce fuel expenses by $35,000. That was when inquiries began pouring in, from investors, city leaders, and major freight companies. Our story first appeared in a niche trade newsletter, then a broader one, and eventually in Tech Pulse. Meanwhile, back in my hometown, everyone still believed I worked in computers. Whenever someone asked, my father would say, "She does something with maps and machines. It's kind of beyond me." It always had been. The same year my sister separated from her husband, she nearly had her vehicle repossessed. Her payments were overdue. Her credit had collapsed. She kept it from most of us, only confiding one night in my mother over the phone. My mother shared it with me, and that same night, I sent $7,200 via wire transfer. Nobody said thanks. Not me. There were no official declarations, no explanations. Even my sister said nothing. However, about a month later, she uploaded a photo to Chatterbox with a caption, "Starting fresh 1 mile at a time. God is good." She didn't tag anyone or add a message. Still, the car was visible, and the license plate remained unchanged. The car had been paid off in full. It was at that point I realized that something had changed. But it wasn't a change in me. It was in my family. I hadn't actually been cast out. Not really. More like quietly erased, bit by bit. And the first to hit delete was the relative I'd helped more than anyone else. My sister Tuesday morning arrived just as any other. Early, silent, far too much coffee. At Next Root Solutions, we kick off each week with a stand-up at 6:45 a.m. Nothing fancy, just straightforward updates. I try to keep things minimal around here, especially now. As soon as our meeting wrapped up, Val Jensen from HR stopped me by the elevator. She said I would be leading onboarding at noon with 5 new additions to the team. One of those new hires actually came from North Carolina. Tyler Boyd. I hesitated. That name stirred a distant recognition. Vague, like a melody from childhood that lingers long after I had forgotten it. Suddenly, I remembered. Tyler, who was involved with my sister. He was the one who appeared in our family pictures during Thanksgiving last year, dressed in plaid and quietly smiling. Everyone in my family described him as dependable, gentle, and reliable. People who seemed trustworthy had always been valued by those around me. Val handed me the folder. I knew that Tyler, an entry-level hire in data analytics, had originally trained as a civil engineer and shifted into systems modeling just within the past year. A quarter of an hour later, I stepped into the orientation room. 5 new team members sat there, each with a crisp appearance and uneasy body language. One person among them gave a subtle startle the moment I greeted them. "Good morning. I'm Taylor Reed, co-founder and COO. Welcome to Next Root Solutions." Tyler sat across from me. I noticed his jaw tighten and his pen freeze midair. He remained silent for the next half hour. After the presentation ended and the other new hires filed out while he waited to meet with HR, he stalled a moment longer. "Ms. Reed, Taylor," he stammered. "Taylor's fine," I replied. "Unless you're planning to make the onboarding process a nightmare," I said, almost grinning. He let out a shaky laugh, shoving his hands in his pockets. "It's just, I didn't realize it was you. My sister never told me you ran the company. She hardly brings me up at all." He gave a slow nod. I suppose I didn't put it together. I waited for him to say more. "Is it strange for me to be here?" he asked. "Working for you, I mean." "Only if you decide to make it strange." Those words seemed to ease something for him. "All right, great. I really wanted this position. What you all do here is impressive." "Then put your attention on that," I told him. "You'll do great." He gave me a real smile that time. Nothing fake about it. As he exited, I noticed a subtle change. The difference wasn't in him, but in me. Someone from their life had just crossed into mine. And for the very first time, I kept my gaze steady and didn't avert it. The post appeared on Chatterbox on Wednesday. My sister set her profile to public. No tags. Uploading a photo of my mother grinning, rosy-cheeked, with gold balloons spelling out 61 behind her. The message below the picture read, "Can't wait to celebrate this beautiful woman this Saturday. Family means everything." I found myself staring at it far longer than I'd intended. Within an hour, there were 45 responses. Relatives, people from church, and neighbors from the past all expressed pride in my mother. All the sisters were going to be reunited again. Debbie would be bringing her signature lemon cake. As I scrolled through each one, It felt like watching the last bit of daylight disappear behind glass. Nobody mentioned me, not even an understated, "wish you were here." No one wondered aloud where the eldest daughter had gone. I wasn't simply missing, I was eliminated. There's a distinction. Being forgotten just happens, without intent, but being erased is deliberate. Erasure requires someone's choice. The quiet hit me with a pain as sharp as a blade. I shut down the app, pushed my phone away, and sat in silence. I lingered there for a bit. It was the kind of quiet that felt even weightier than any sound. Afterwards, I rose, made my way to the closet, found the navy suit, and ironed it myself. I arranged the flight that evening, not to get back at anyone, and not to create drama. All I wanted was for them to truly see me. Not as a list of achievements, or as some headline. Just myself. Not the version they remembered, but the person I had actually become. Although no one asked me to be there, I wasn't about to let my absence dictate my story this time. North Carolina still carried the same scent as ever: mown grass, aged pine, and air thick with recollection. I got a room at a simple hotel just beyond the edge of town. No unnecessary extras or conversation, just a tidy bed, a lamp that worked, and quiet I didn't have to work for. I replied to several texts, used the steamer on my suit, and set the envelope on the bedside table. Plain white paper, unaddressed. Please wait a moment. Inside the envelope were 2 first-class tickets to Nova Scotia. My mother once mentioned she hoped to witness the northern lights before her knees stopped cooperating. She had mentioned it in a casual conversation 30 years ago, sipping discount tea from a chipped mug. That moment stuck with me. I never forgot details like that. Lancaster Chop House had stayed exactly as I remembered from my high school graduation celebration. The brown awning was still there, the host still wore his trademark pocket square, and the same piano medley drifted through the air. I arrived a bit after 7. The hostess blinked when I gave her my name, glancing quickly at the list. There was a slight pause, then she nodded softly. I was directed to a private gathering in the back room on the left. I could hear the laughter first, silverware chiming and glasses clinking, a lively beat from those not considering who might be missing. That's when I walked in. My mother sat at the heart of a long table, glowing in a royal blue dress, surrounded by cousins, neighbors, and longtime friends. Her smile radiated warmth as she sat dignified in her chair. Seated beside her, my father had his arms folded as if he were posing for a formal photograph. To her left was my sister, whose kids squirmed in their seats, their faces reddened by too many sweets. And at the opposite side of the room, close to the window, sat Tyler Boyd, who observed in silence. The atmosphere in the room didn't break instantly. Instead, things stalled gradually, bit by bit. One of my cousins lifted their eyes toward me. My uncle stopped mid-chew with his fork caught in the air. The low buzz of conversation faded out, leaving nothing except a thick, buzzing unease. That was when the remark I most expected rang out. Much louder than needed, but entirely as anticipated. "Well," my father drawled with a crooked smile, "look who decided to show up." I didn't reply, nor did I glance in his direction. Rather than face him, I crossed to my mother, walking with measured calm. I bent down and set the envelope softly on the table before my mother. "Happy birthday, Mom," I told her. "I hope your day is every bit as lovely as you are." At first she seemed puzzled, as though she couldn't quite believe I was actually there. There was neither warning nor precedent. Diane Roper's hands hesitated above the envelope before finally lifting it, as though it might vanish at her touch. When she broke the seal, her fingers quivered. I heard her draw a sharp breath. The quiet in the room thickened. She raised her eyes to me, mouth open as if to ask something but unable to speak the words. Only a single word escaped her lips: Nova Scotia. I gave a silent reply with a nod. I remembered once mentioning I'd never gone there. I figured the moment had come. I watched as she swallowed with effort, her eyes welling though the tears didn't fall. She extended her hand, not to claim, but as if to steady herself. And sitting across from me, my father breathed out in that familiar way of his, uneasy, but still trying to keep his composure. Still likes to make an entrance, doesn't he? Still has to make it all about himself. Those comments didn't have any bite. Not now, since the focus in the room was no longer just on me. The quiet remained unbroken. Instead, it changed. Not shattered sharply, but warped like air on a hot day. Feeling unsettled, the sensation was barely noticeable and difficult to describe. My mother gripped the envelope with both hands, as if she feared it might fall away. She opened her mouth again, but still said nothing. On the opposite side, my sister's fork sat uneasily on her dish, untouched from the moment I arrived. Her sons fidgeted next to her, picking up on the tension the grown-ups wouldn't speak of. Sitting at the distant end was Tyler Boyd, his hand tightly around his glass, knuckles white. Tyler's eyes were locked on me, not with bewilderment or surprise, but with patient anticipation. My father, undisturbed, raised his wine to his lips, then cleared his throat as if preparing for a toast. "Thoughtful move," he mumbled. "I've always liked postcards better, personally." In the past, that would have gotten a little laugh or a courteous chuckle, but this time the room stayed silent. Tyler then got to his feet. Not suddenly, not in a way to stir up attention. He just stood, straightening the collar of his shirt, and stared directly at my father. "She hasn't tried to center herself in all this," he stated, his voice unwavering. "Understood. You did that instead." My father's eyes flickered with surprise. A cousin nudged in a little. Tyler Boyd kept his gaze fixed. "That's Taylor Reed," he went on, "the co-founder and COO of NextRoute Solutions, which is now one of the most rapidly expanding AI logistics firms in the Western region. She's not simply remarkable, people hold her in high regard. And she's actually why I accepted this position." Suddenly, all attention shifted, with some people looking toward me, and others glancing at my sister, Marie Roper Hastings, whose cheeks had grown noticeably paler. Tyler shot her a look, then I watched as he refocused on everyone. "I put in my application months back, long before I ever recognized her name. And after I figured out her identity, I felt honored. I still do." The silence in the room shifted again. This time, it felt heavier, more present. Tyler still had more to say. "You speak about family as if it stays static forever, but true family adapts, grows, and welcomes new people. Taylor, I didn't leave of my own accord. You forced my mother out. Yet even after that, she managed to create something from which all of us, myself included, now reap the rewards." I took a seat. There was no recognition, no verbal response, just the heaviness of his statements settling like particles in the morning light. I glanced at my mother. Her gaze was fixed on me. Her hands remained placed atop the envelope, as if it anchored her. She remained silent. There was no need for my mother to say anything. I shifted my attention to my sister, Marie. She wouldn't meet my eyes. She kept her focus on her glass of water, lips pressed tightly together and her jaw set. The men next to my sister remained quiet. They didn't question what was going on. They already understood everything. My father stayed motionless, not rigid or irritated, just completely unmoving. And in that moment, I caught my first glimpse of him without his defenses. There was no performance for him now. No joking or sarcastic facade remained to shield him, just a man confronting something he had chosen to ignore for so long. I reached down for my bag and stood up from where I sat. "I'm not staying long," I murmured to my mother. "I just needed to see your smile." She lifted her hands, grasping mine in both of hers. "You did?" she breathed. As I turned to go, my shoes clicked on the tile. Soft but impossible to miss. Nobody trailed behind me. No one called out for me. And that was all right, since this time I wasn't departing quietly. I was leaving, making my presence known. I didn't shed tears that night. I slipped off my shoes, ordered grilled salmon through room service, and powered up my laptop. The Q1 projection remained stable. The latest routing systems at NextRoute Solutions were exceeding projections, and 2 city contracts had just passed through legal review. According to the numbers, all was well. At 8:15 p.m., the hotel phone began to ring. The front desk attendant explained that a woman was asking for me and quietly gave her name. My mother, Diane Roper. She showed up carrying a plastic tub. Carefully wrapped in a kitchen towel were lemon bars, the treat my mother was known for. The bars were lopsided, their tops cracked and dusted with sugar, tender and sweet, and unmistakably made by my mother. She paused in the doorway, a little hesitant about whether she could step inside. I let her enter. She took in the space, observing it as if she were discovering a hidden part of who I am. My mother softly remarked on my preference for keeping things tidy. I commented in return that she always gravitated towards sweetness. We shared a small smile. Not big, not particularly warm, but it was something. Neither of us brought up that dinner. That would have to wait. Instead, our conversation turned to Nova Scotia. I recounted the details of the cruise. Intimate, calm, meant for stargazing rather than buying souvenirs. My mother surprised me by pressing for more details about NextRoute Solutions, my coworkers, and the nature of my job. My mother wasn't just making casual conversation, she was making a real effort. In time, I saw her hands settle in her lap. Her tone softened. She admitted she hadn't truly understood how much weight I'd carried through the years. I answered her. Nobody had ever inquired before. She gave a nod, not to resist, but to receive what I said. She explained that they had tried to make me seem smaller, hoping I would be simpler to understand. She regretted that choice, calling it a misstep. I didn't hurry to offer forgiveness, but I also didn't turn her away. She wondered aloud if she might come visit Portland someday. I agreed. 3 days later, my phone lit up with my sister's name. I paused for a moment, then picked up. She skipped over small talk entirely. She confessed she didn't know exactly why she was calling, or maybe part of her did. Tyler Boyd had told her the whole story, not just what was shared at the party, but also how he spoke about me afterward. He described my presence, my leadership, and the composure I maintained during chaos. It unsettled her. She admitted she had only ever seen me as stubborn, never truly as resilient. She told me that when I left, it once felt like betrayal to her, but now she wondered if it had actually been an act of self-preservation. I just listened and let her continue, allowing silence to settle between us as she processed her thoughts. She confessed that she used to feel bitter toward me for growing while she remained unchanged. That, she admitted, made her feel insignificant. I reassured her, explaining that she wasn't insignificant, but rather still in the process of becoming. She let out a breath, as if releasing something she hadn't realized she'd been holding on to. She mentioned that my mother wanted to come see me, then murmured that maybe she wanted to as well. I told her both of them would be more than welcome. Just before the call ended, my mother's voice broke once again. She told me she was proud of me, not just for my achievements, but because I never diminished her worth, even though she had sometimes tried to make me feel unseen. When I returned to Portland that Saturday, there was an envelope for me at the hotel front desk. There was no sender listed, only my name written in my father, Dean Roper's, Unmistakable, steady script. Inside was a single sheet of paper. In it, he said that my life had unfolded differently than he had anticipated, perhaps even for the better. He admitted he wasn't sure how to make amends for underestimating me, and wondered if he even had the right to. But my mother had assured him that I was genuinely creating something lasting. He told me that he trusted her judgment. Then he added, "You always had that stubborn streak." I confused it with defiance, but it was really foresight. There was no affectionate closing, no signature, and yet also no denial. For someone of his nature, perhaps that was the most he could offer. And maybe that sufficed. That summer, I purchased my first house in Seaview County. The place rested at the outskirts of the redwood forest, quietly basking in sunlight, looking out over a bend in the bay where the water shone metallic at sundown. Each floorboard groaned in just the right way. The breeze carried hints of eucalyptus mingled with sea air. Modest though it was, it felt just right. When I moved in, my colleagues surprised me with a present: a framed canvas print, a rich navy background with white text. A phrase I'd once tossed out during a bleary-eyed evening work session, equal parts amused and drained, echoed in my mind. Construct something so remarkable they can't help but notice. Now it was mounted above my workspace. Directly below, protected in a smaller display, was a yellow sticky note with its corners slightly lifting, a bit of ink blurred on one edge. On that note, penned in Tyler Boyd's neat script, sat 4 words: "I'm her supervisor." I never found out who kept it. The only thing I knew for sure was that it was significant. Not because it served as proof of anything, but because it came from someone who had once been on the opposite side and chose to step forward. What truly mattered wasn't my arrival. What mattered was that I held fast until the silence finally broke under its own weight. There was no need for me to raise my voice, nor did I require a place at someone else's table to restore my sense of self. I simply crafted a stronger one myself. I left the door open and forgot to lock it. 6 years later, when my mother reached 66 years old, we hosted a celebration on my patio, illuminated by string lights with gentle jazz playing in the background. My sister brought over the birthday cake. Tyler Boyd was the one managing the slideshow for the evening. My father chose a seat in the corner, remaining mostly silent but very much there, observing everything. As night slowly settled, my father wandered over to me, his hands stuffed in his pockets and his expression gentle, carrying a mix of remembrance and regret. He didn't have much to say. Instead, he handed me an old photograph of myself at 10, building a company out of shoeboxes and tape, with Smart Moves Inc. scribbled in red marker. On the back of the photograph, he'd scribbled, "Turns out you always knew." We lingered together for some moments, not as adversaries, nor entirely as family, but as human beings at last truly facing each other. I hadn't returned seeking absolution. I came back simply so nobody could ever claim I vanished without a trace. Not this time. Being wholeheartedly received wasn't necessary. What I really needed was to know I remained. I left the truth lingering behind as I walked out of the room,